This is a video about customizing your own aliases and dot files in the command line interface. Aliases are useful for automating common paths that we regularly navigate to. For example, I commonly navigate to a Jeopardy folder, which is a Vue Node personal side project. The absolute path for that project on my local machine is home/code/sandbox/Jeopardy. In a dot file, I can make an alias named Jeopardy that resolves to cd and the path of my Jeopardy repository. We have two options when it comes to aliases. We can add the alias directly to the config file for our shell, or we can create our own dot file and reference and source that from our shell config file. I'll quickly go over both. Using the text editor of your choice, edit your shell config file. Save and quit. And now we want to source that config file so that our terminal will pick up on that new alias. I want to briefly talk about the which command, which just shows you what an alias resolves to or where a specific program is located. If you ever forget what it does, but you remember what the alias is named, you can use this before you run it. Now the second option is sourcing your own set of dot files. I like this if you foresee yourself having a lot of aliases and you just want to extract all that logic to its own file, separation of concerns. So back in our shell config file, I'll remove this alias and add a line sourcing a .aliases file. Save and quit. The .aliases file doesn't exist yet, so we'll use a command called touch to create it on the fly. And again, using the text editor of your choice, go into that newly created .aliases file. Let's create our alias. I created an alias with a long name that defeats the purpose of saving keystrokes, but this is just to show you that this is a different alias being sourced from a different dot file. Save and quit, source, try out our new alias. As you can see, the alias from that .aliases file works just the same. If you plan on having multiple aliases, I do highly recommend extracting them to your own dot files. It's worth noting that if you're using something like ohmyzsh on top of the Z shell, there are plugins available with common aliases for things like Git and npm. Now that you know how to create aliases, there's some pros and cons to keep in mind. Pros: automate commands you use repeatedly. Cut down on keystrokes. Get your local environment set up more quickly. Cons: becoming reliant on them. You might forget the syntax of the original command when you're on a different machine, or when you're SSH to another box that doesn't have those aliases registered. Forgetting the aliases themselves when you have too many or they're named too similarly. Adopting a robust naming structure can help. Alias names become longer than the original command itself. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos on improving your development workflow.